Yeah, I'd like to call the city council meeting to order. This is for February 21st, 2023, open session at 6:01.
Councilmember Wong?
Here.
Councilmember Voigt?
Here.
Councilmember Laura?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Here.
Mayor Martinez?
Here. Councilmember Voigt, can you do the pledge of allegiance one more time?
Ready? Begin.
Okay, do we have any action on requested excused absences? Adjustments to the agenda or conflict of interest disclosure? All right, seeing none, I just want to remind the public that we did not have a closed session today, so we started right at open session. So that brings us to item B, announcements, recognition, proclamations, and correspondence. So we are B1, the recognition of officers' actions during a deputy down call. Chief Talese?
Evening, Mayor and Council. The Riverside Sheriff's Department could not be with us tonight to help acknowledge the actions by the officers. They are in a critical incident in their jurisdiction, so we wish them the best on that. On December 29th, 2022, at approximately 1:45 p.m., Deputy Cordero of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department stopped a pickup truck for a vehicle code violation in Jurupa, California. During the encounter, the suspect, later identified as William McKay, had shot and killed Deputy Cordero and fled the scene. A countywide manhunt ensued, and personnel from the Beaumont Police Department responded to the scene, offering assistance. That personnel was our crime suppression unit, led by Sergeant Reginald Autry. He led his team to the front line in Jurupa to line up with other Riverside County Sheriff's deputies to offer assistance in any capacity that they may need. Obviously, a lot going on in that sense. Sergeant Autry had asked the sheriff's investigators what they knew about the suspect. The team was provided with a photograph, not only of the suspect, but his vehicle and several locations that the suspect had listed during prior arrests. Obviously, a career criminal has lengthy rap sheet and they move from place to place. After examining the list carefully and using their hunch, they selected a residence in Rancho Cucamonga, California to try to locate the suspect, McKay. As Sergeant Autry and his team drove northbound on the I-15, as chance would have it, or as we say, the police gods were aligned that day, the suspect entered the freeway right in front of our officers. Of course, the suspect had taken measures to elude capture and removed his license plate and a very distinctive blue tarp that was on the vehicle. But there was some distinctive markings. We had photographs of those. And unfortunately, our team is able to drive both marked units and unmarked units. And this day, they were in unmarked units. We're able to drive next up to the suspect, confirm the identity. And the reason that's important is with that type of manhunt, if you falsely think or inadvertently think that you have the suspect and you call that out, every police officer in the area is going to respond, and you could pull them off of what could have been a true capture. So they were able to confirm that this was indeed the suspect. They put that out on the radio system, which of course we're able to communicate with both counties and multiple counties through our radio system now. Of course, the suspect, for one reason or another, made an inadvertent exit from the freeway, believing that they'd been identified as police officers. A pursuit was initiated, and as soon as marked units were able to get into the pursuit, our units dropped back since they're unmarked cars. And that's for the safety of our officers and the motoring public. And so finally, Sergeant Autry, Officer Rodriguez, Wynn, and Markel are to be commended for their tenacity, bravery, and skills in helping to locate McKay. Their actions are in keeping with the highest standards set forth by law enforcement. And so we're going to present them with a Chief's Commendation, and we'll do that at this time. So recognizing Sergeant Reginald Autry. In recognition for Officer Gregory Markel. In recognition of Officer Jessica Rodriguez. And in recognition for Officer Kevin Nguyen. And at this time, Mayor, I'd like to turn this over to you and the council for any comments you may have.
Open it up to council comments. Go ahead, Mr. White.
No, I'm sorry.
Just thank, well, go ahead and thank you.
On behalf of the citizens of Beaumont and the Inland Empire and all those who protect and serve, we want to thank you guys for doing a good job and paying attention and following that hunch. I know the Lord looks out for all of us, and doing your job and being in the right place helps you to be in tune with that. So thank you very much.
Right?
And I do want to mention as well, so thank you. So, you know, in addition to Beaumont PD, your brotherhood and sisterhood of having, just looking out for one another is remarkable and it's commendable. And that's what helps keep crime in its place. And I have to thank you for that, because it takes a village to do these. And, you know, I'm so proud of you, and we all are, and the residents as well. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
And Mayor, can we have the officers line up here
You
with
bet.
the council for a photo? No, they'll have their moment. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Chief. All right, so moving on to public comments. Do we have public comments this evening?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, so seeing no public comment today, we'll go to item D, consent calendar. Items on the consent calendar are taken as one action item unless an item is pulled for further discussion. Do we have any items to pull, questions, or I'll take a motion?
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar, all items D1 through D9.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fent?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. That brings us to item E. We are in public hearings. Approve all ordinances and resolutions to be read by title only. This is E1, the public hearing and consideration of approval of a resolution for the Second Amendment of the city's fiscal year 22-23 through 26-27 capital improvement plan. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the item before you is the formal resolution amending the CIP and related prior year projects that you heard at the February 7th council meeting. Embedded within your staff report is a tabular summary of the First Amendment, which was adopted on November 1. And then there's also a line-by-line breakdown of the changes that were previously discussed within your staff report. And with that, it is recommended that City Council hold a public hearing and adopt by title only a resolution amending the CIP and prior year related projects for fiscal year 23 through 27.
All right, thank you for that. I'll open the public hearing at 6:11 PM. Do we have public comments?
I have no requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 6:11 PM. Open up to council discussion. Councilmember Voigt?
Oh, I apologize.
Okay, Councilmember White?
Yes, so just so I understand, on page 300, second page of the staff report, it talks about let's take the first one, Potrero Interchange Phase 1 and 2, budget 24 million, 24.9 change, and then the new budget. That budget is not indicating whether we have that amount of funding at this point, correct? It's just a budget for the project.
Yeah, so this is a combination of phase 1 and 2, so it includes phase 1, which is the construction of the bridge itself, but it's not inclusive of obviously the funding shortfall that we have for phase 2.
Okay, so what I guess what I'm trying to understand is the new budget of 26 million. We do have some of that 26 million, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Yeah, it's including the expenditures that we have as well. So we actually, currently, we have 6.5 million, which have been allocated from WRCOG and the Paso and TIP plan, which we will contribute towards the phase 2 interchange. So there is some, yes.
So all we're looking at tonight is what these amounts, the budgeted amounts are for each project.
Right, the adjustments.
Got it. That's what I needed. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Seeing no other discussion or questions, I'll entertain a motion then. All right, so I'll go ahead and make a motion to waive the full reading and adopt by title only a resolution of the City Council of Beaumont amending the 5-year capital improvement plan for fiscal years 22-23 through 26-27 and related prior year CIP project list.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. That brings us to item E2, the public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Chapter 3.02 of the Beaumont Municipal Code, procurement of professional services. Staff report?
Because this item involves an ordinance that would affect legal services my firm provides, I'm going to recuse myself on this item.
Thank you, Mr. Pinckney.
Thank you, Mayor. At a January meeting, City Council discussed making changes to the procurement ordinance, Chapter 3 of the Beaumont Municipal Code. And out of that discussion, staff was directed to make 4 separate changes. They include exemptions to the competitive procurement procedures exempting legal services. If you recall, that is also in the state public contract code. The second change was increasing the City Council required approval to $75,000. The third change is to increase the contract award from 5 years to 5 years with 2 single-year approvals subject to City Council approval. And then the last one was to increase the professional service contracts without competitive bidding from 25,000 to 75,000. And so tonight is the first reading of that ordinance. And with that, I recommend that you hold the public hearing and adopt by title only the ordinance.
Thank you for that. So I'll open the public hearing at 6:15 PM. Public comments?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, I'll close at 6:16 PM. Open up to council discussion and questions. Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes, thank you. Ms. Gibbs, so the $75,000 limit for city manager, and the other one for, what was that? Oh my goodness.
Contracts
Train of
without
thought. Thank you.
competitive bidding process.
Yes, thank you. Are those similar limits to other cities that are similar in size to ours?
Other cities have a variety. Some are 25,000, some are as high as 500,000. It just depends on the size of the city and what that council is particularly comfortable with.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Here, Councilmember White?
Oh,
I think you said white.
that's what I thought he said.
You go
I was
ahead.
just testing you. Go ahead.
Councilmember Laura, you may go if.
There you go. No, I was just going to make a motion if there was no other questions, but
I do have a couple questions. So just for nostalgia, we originally, I think when Mike and I came on council, we had a number that was much larger than 25,000. And we went through the process of determining we had a trust factor with the administration at the time. So that's when we moved back to 25,000. I think 75,000 makes more sense because I think we have rebuilt that trust with the administration. So the other issue is, so right now, tell me what your process or policy is on items that go on the consent calendar. Are they governed by the 25,000 versus 75,000? In other words, yes, you're saying that city manager can process a service or a contract under 75,000. But does that mean everything under 75,000 will be done by your office and not through a consent calendar item? Can you just sort of fill in where the consent calendar fits in here as far as the limits we have there?
So the 75,000 limit would only apply to professional services,
Okay.
not maintenance services or public works contracts. Those still have their own threshold.
But I'm not talking necessarily about the contracts. I thought we were just giving you the authority not to have to come to us if it was 30,000 or 35,000.
And you're correct. And as far as the consent calendar, the mayor and I sat down and he kind of gave me his protocol on what he'd like to see on the consent and what would go on action, if that answers your.
I understand what you're saying, but I think that is a question of what goes on the consent based on dollar amounts, which we've discussed before, would not be a mayor's decision. I think that would be a council's
Okay, and
discussion, council's
I'm
decision.
unaware of that conversation.
There hasn't been a conversation,
okay.
but I know that at some point, we came in and didn't we, and we said, we don't need to see everything on the action items, things that are at a certain amount. We're okay with you putting those to
Okay.
the consent calendar. So I don't know if we actually set a number or, a dollar amount. Do you remember that, Mike?
I thought it was consistent. I thought we did set a dollar amount, and I thought it was consistent with the 25,000.
That's where I'm asking you.
Oh, okay.
That's
Okay.
a long time ago.
So I think before the idea was that it went on the consent calendar if it was 25,000 or more than 25,000, right?
Right. Yeah, he had a signing, prior administration had the signing authority that we had set up prior.
So the city manager could expend an amount of 20,000 and wouldn't necessarily need to be on the consent calendar. So I don't know, that's where I'm asking if anyone has any other input on direction as to, see, the deal with this consent calendar is if we are doing action items that are sort of benign in nature, and we'd rather just have you take care of them as under that limit, then I think that's important to put those on the consent calendar. But The other problem is, and I think we've run into this recently, or at least I did in the last couple of years, is when there's too many items on the consent calendar, then we end up approving consent calendar as a whole and not looking at each individual item really closely. So I'm just wanting to get your feedback on those
Can I
comments.
comment on that, Mr. White? real
Sure, I'll
quickly?
turn the meeting back if you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And so if you're more comfortable, city manager and I discussed kind of what we thought the protocol would be. And if you'd like us to bring that back, I think you'll be comfortable with it. Basically, we're talking a little bit about, you know, if it's the second time we've seen it, it doesn't need to go on action and go on consent. If it's something new, then it goes on consent. And there was kind of an outline that we had discussed on what consent would look like. So if you're more comfortable coming back so we can talk about it, that would be okay with me.
Yeah, I would like to. I think that, you know, I think that at one point I thought we had, in my mind, there was a process that I was comfortable with, and I haven't seen anything over the years that have
But
changed that, so
But for
no.
this one, though, we're just talking about the,
Contracts.
yeah, professional services. So are you comfortable the way this is written, just for professional, and then bring back?
Oh, I'm comfortable with the way this is written completely. I'm just suggesting that we need to know what your process or policy is going to be on
Yeah.
what we can expect to see on consent and which ones we can, you know, if that has changed.
Let me clarify something. So currently, anything under 25,000 would not be on the agenda at all. Anything over 25,000 would have to be on the agenda, and where that's placed is where I would need clear direction. So anything, with this proposed ordinance, anything under 75,000 is not going to be on the agenda.
See, and that is I think the discussion that we need
Okay.
and we may come out of it and say, you're right, that's the way to go. But I do remember it the way you explained it. If it's under 25,000, we don't need to see it on the consent calendar. I'm just wondering if we're taking into account, now we're going up to 75,000. Are there some things that are between 25 and 75 that we would want to see on the consent?
And that, yes, then I would need direction on that.
Okay.
Because it would affect the way this proposed ordinance is written.
Even though the ordinance is specifying professional services, I'm assuming.
Correct. So if this ordinance is passed, anything under 75,000 is not going to come to council.
But it doesn't say that in the ordinance, correct?
It,
That's what I'm saying, is if I had seen something that said it's not going to come to on consent, then
well, in section 3.02.060, it would read increasing city council required approval to 75,000. So that means city council would be required to approve anything over 75,000, whether it's on consent or action. Anything under that would not require city council approval, and so it would not come to a city council meeting.
But this is written for professional services.
Right.
Correct.
So anything else besides that
Right.
is a separate issue. That's not a part of this code.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct. You have three sections.
Right.
In-
that I understand and that I'm comfortable with. I'm just saying we need to have that discussion.
Okay.
I think we at least need to have the
And
discussion.
I agree, and I go back to, but you're okay with this one for
Yes.
professional, sir? Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I agree. I think we need to bring back what we discussed so we can, have it on the dais, and I think they'll be comfortable, but input would be great, so. Okay.
Okay.
Any others?
So do you have a motion already?
Mr.
I was
Laura was
going to.
itching, so,
Oh, is there any-
only if he lets
oh,
you.
it's all good? All right. So I'll make a motion to waive the full reading and approve the first reading by title only, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Beaumont, California, amending Chapter 3.02 to the City of Beaumont Municipal Code.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. All right, so that brings us to action items F. We will begin with F1, the award of a professional services agreement to David Turch and Associates for federal lobbying services in an amount not to exceed $87,000 annually.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is a request to award a professional services agreement for federal lobbying services. The city is currently in our fifth year of a five-year term on our current lobbying service contract. Per the municipal code, Maximum term we can have a professional services contract is 5 years. So on December 8th of 2022, we released a request for proposal for federal lobbying services. A federal lobbyist is one who will represent the city in Washington, D.C., going to monitor federal legislation, advocate on policy and funding with House, Senate, as well as with various federal agencies and congressional committees. A federal lobbying firm will help the city develop stronger, faster, and more effective approach to protecting our interests and securing the funding support that we need for our regional projects. The proposals were due on January 11, 2023. We received 3 proposals. The proposals were evaluated by the city manager, police chief, and myself, and they were ranked on criteria which is listed in your staff report. Of those 3, on page 2 of your staff report, there is a matrix showing the ranking of each responding firm, what their score was. All 3 of the firms were also interviewed, and the committee recommended the best qualified firm based on the ranking criteria, and that was David Turch and Associates. This proposal was also presented to the RFP subcommittee on February 10th of this year for review and recommendation to the City Council. At this time, staff is recommending City Council award a professional services agreement for federal lobbying services for a term of 5 years to David Turch and Associates in an amount not to exceed $7,250 per month or $87,000 annually. I'm happy to answer any questions, as well as Mr. David Turch, who is in the audience with us this evening.
Thank you. Public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, seeing none, we'll open it up to council discussion. Okay, Mr. White? No one else? I'll go after you.
So I think that I'm not the only one who's had some concerns over the quality of representation we've been getting over the last number of years. And so I think that that's one reason why we were so so confident in going out to bid again. Is there a way that, and maybe Mr. Church can speak to this, is there a way that we can monitor the process throughout the coming years and not put ourselves in a position again where, you know, we're someone who's just not giving us the representation that we need? So I don't know if that's something you've run into, either of you, before with working with lobbying firms?
I haven't experienced that until recently. Prior, it was, and I'd like Mr. Turch to come up. He did fly in just for this meeting, so I think we should let him say a few words. But Mr. Turch, if you could explain your firm's approach to keeping this council updated on what's happening back east, that would be appreciated, if that's all right.
Yes, please.
Councilmember White, I think if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah,
Yep.
just an idea, and then I'd like to follow up with a comment.
City Manager, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, when you say a few words to a man from Washington, this could be a filibuster. It suffices to say that we have in our standard contracts, and I'm not exactly sure since I don't enter into that myself, what our contract would be with the city. We give you the option to leave with a 30-day notice at any time. If you're not happy with what we're producing, then you don't become a good reference for me for the next city I want to take up. And correspondingly, I really want you to be enthused about what we're doing and to understand that this is really a cooperative effort. So when you talk about communication, for instance, we would hope that you would show up in Washington a minimum of 1 time a year, sometimes maybe 2 or 3 times, depending on the issue and what's there. We'll take care of all the scheduling. We'll do everything that you need. We'll tell you why you need to be there. We'll suggest times that are convenient to you. But I would like to tell you that tonight, my supply of pixie dust to just run down the hall and sprinkle good things that are going to happen to you is pretty limited. So we really need to be working together. I think you'll find that communication is very good with my firm. And my role in the firm really is that if it is not for any of you at any time, I want you to tell me, and I can make the change just like that. I will tell you, however, that we're a very stable firm. Of 8 line employees, 5 have been with me more than 20 years. So we're used to working together. We're used to delivering for clients. It is typical for us to have clients not for a year or 2 or 3, but by the decade.
I'd like to ask Mr. Church a quick question while he's up here. So not having a local office, but being stationed mainly in Washington, does that bring about any type of issue? I mean, now that we have Zoom and stuff, I would assume not.
It makes me very popular with the airlines and the rental car companies. I thought it was because I was kind of good-looking and spoke well. My COO said, yeah, not so much. So I think what you would find is no different than this evening. I came out here to be with you specifically to answer any questions that you might have, and I'm going right back to Washington because I've taken a look at your weather, and it's going to be 80 degrees and sunny in Washington tomorrow.
Thank you. All right, go ahead.
So I just want to express to you what my concern is. In our past working with lobbying firms, as you know, you folks have multiple clients that all have similar interests. And I think that's where it's in our best interest to come to somebody who has a good list of clients. And so I understand what you're saying as far as our approval of you is going to help you get more clients. But I think sometimes I feel like we're just not the most important client. And we're just one of many clients. And so I don't know that over the last few years, I think we originally ended our lobbying contract back in 2015, 2016. We went for a while without it. I don't know that I saw a whole lot of benefits after we came back on track with the new lobbyist. I understand we're getting a lot of updates on bills that are happening in the state and where the federal government is going with their bills and what will impact us. But I'm just trying to express to you before we move forward that it's important to me that we are one of your more important clients.
I think if you weren't important to me, I wouldn't be here this evening. And I think that's the ultimate, really, expression of how important you are. Well, let's just go back to say that the airlines like me and in any event. So with a lot of frequent flyer miles, although I buy cheap tickets, I still get pretty good seats. The answer is, I would pledge to you right now that communication is not going to be a difficulty. And the answer is, this is government. We will win for you because I can't think of a case in 3 decades in this business that we've lost. Some come with a telephone call that I expected to be really difficult, and some that I thought would be really simple cases have taken me years to accomplish. But we, as a firm, you retain us on behalf of the citizens of this community to expend treasure and time to get a return on your investment from the federal dollars. That's what the game is all about. And we think a little bit differently, I think, than the average firm with which you might have been working. You don't care where the reward comes from, and I've said this over and over now for decades. You have a transportation project, and too often you're focused on transportation dollars, but you don't have to be. Money is fungible, and you're spending money on things today that maybe the feds could pay for if you can't. Well, I'll give you a really good example. A couple of years ago, the Riverside Transit Authority had a rescission of $1.1 million. For we in the feds, it's kind of, why are you calling me? But okay. They were disturbed that they'd lost I went all the way up to the Secretary of Transportation, Ray LaHood, who was a good personal friend at the time, called Ray and said, Ray, you have to bail me out on this. I need to keep the 1.1 mil. And his answer in a half an hour when he called back was, I can't do it. It's gone. What we did is we got 2.2 million for Riverside Transit. We couldn't put it now into the Temecula Transit Center. That was rescinded, so we put 2.2 into the Riverside Transit Center. What if Riverside put the 1.1 back? I didn't know about it and it didn't matter, but money's fungible and that's the way we think. So correspondingly, I think first of all, you deserve regular reports, but I like those reports to really be verbal. If you want me to put something in writing, I assume that can be above the fold on the front page of the Washington Post, the New York Times, or the Wall Street Journal. This is going to be Civics 101, guys, and I'm not going to really tell you what call went to who or what because first of all, your senators, your congressmen, and particularly, remember, you're not retaining us just to deal with your 2 senators or your congressmen. We know people from all around the U.S. So for instance, when I got off the airplane today, I had a call from the water, whatever they are, fire and water in El Dorado County, and he'll be in Washington next Monday, appearing before a committee, but he wanted to know if he could see, because they have huge agricultural issues, the Secretary of Agriculture. And the answer is yes, another good friend. I think on a short notice, it's going to be a short visit, but we can probably get him in with Tom for 10 or 15 minutes. I've taken more time than I should to answer your question, but I want to tell you that we are responsive to you, that I want that responsiveness to be personal. If you're talking to me, I'm the less smart guy in the whole firm, which is how I succeed. You hire really good people who are better and smarter than you, and I've done that. So correspondingly, very often when you're talking to me, I'll get the answer for you, but I won't know it immediately. But in the meantime, I'll put you in touch with the person who's actually dealing with the issue, and they're going to give you a rundown right now of what your position is and whether or not you're going to get whatever it is you want. It's not necessarily always money. Sometimes it's regulatory relief or a regulatory addition. So it's not always money. And the answer very often to me initially can be no. I'll tell you, hey, we're not going to get it here. Here's our next plan so we can get it somewhere else.
So, Mr. Church, if you don't mind, Mayor.
Yeah, please.
So, Mr. Church, I respect the process and the choice that our staff has made, and I'm going to support the contract with you. But what I wanted to do is use the example that you had with the Riverside and Temecula to point out that if we're Temecula and we're now counting on the county to transfer that money that the Temecula thought we were going to get, or Beaumont thought we were going to get, and we're relying on the county, RTA, RCTC, our supervisor, we're relying on them to make sure that $1 million come to Beaumont. That's my concern, is where that's why I bring up the idea that you represent a lot of different clients. And in that case, I'm not so sure I'd be happy if I were Temecula, but I don't want to drag this on any further. And, if anyone else has any other comments, I'd love to hear them, but I'll
All right.
quit there.
So do we have any from Mr. Church? Okay, go ahead. Mayor
Mr.
Pro
Church,
Tem.
thank you for being here. So kind of along with the comment from Mr. White, do lobbyists work with each other when they're representing multiple clients that are nearby? But we're still a small town in a sense, but we've been growing since 2000, early 2000.
Yes.
Gone from 13,000 to 53,000 or so. But we're still small compared to Riverside County, the Temeculas, the Marietas, Corona, and so forth. Would your efforts help to reach out to other lobbyists that are under contract with neighboring cities so we can work together? So then as a pool, we are a larger area with that bigger need? Is that something that goes on in your business?
Well, I suppose I could answer that directly to say I'd be most comfortable working with the lobbyist that represents your contiguous city, Calamasa. Happens to be us.
Okay.
I have a
good
good
to know.
relation with myself.
That
In
is
any
good to know.
event, so often those things that can appear to be in conflict really are synergy. And you can put together a deal that makes, so in other words, the 2 + 2 isn't 4 anymore. It can be 5 or 6. Because one of the things the feds really like is regionalization.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mayor,
Okay.
can I, if you don't mind, I think what Councilmember White is asking is if you have two cities that are clients of yours, and we asked this question during the interview process, and so I think it's important to ask it again. And if you have two cities and we have competing interests, how do you handle representing both to the best of your ability as our lobbyist? If Calamasa and Beaumont have two competing interests, what do you do?
The answer to that is we have a formal written policy in the firm about conflict of interest. When we see that there will be an apparent conflict between any two of our clients, we notify both of you that there may be an apparent conflict, and we'll tell you what side we're going to take. In the 3 decades of the firm, it's happened one time. And it was actually private sector clients who were dealing with the Department of Defense on a huge defense contract. And the answer in the end is they came back and we said, there's a conflict here. You're both competing for the same award. You're 2 of 3 applicants, but we choose to represent, actually we chose at that time Dino Nobel. The Nobel of the Peace Prize has been a client of mine often. They're a lousy client, by the way. Don't tell them I said that. But in any event, no. They're an offshore client who doesn't really understand American government. See, and that's the huge advantage that you have. You understand how government works. They don't. But in any event, the answer to that is they came back and said, no, the Department of Defense, issuing this contract and having that project is more important. We'll work out the difference between the two of us. You continue to service us both. So the answer was, it was really a wonderful thing for me because I could send them each a bill for doing the same thing. That only lasted about a year, but it was really good business. In any event, it's happened one time in 3 decades, and the answer where you are with competing interests, so often you don't really have competing interests. You have the same interests up and down the I-10. I mean, you're choking on the I-10. You have the same rail interests. You have the same health and safety interests in this town that's shared with everybody else. Let's just make that pie bigger as opposed to let's get our little piece out of this and let's not worry about anybody else. We just make a bigger pie.
Thank you, Mr. Church. We're going to open up to council discussion then. Any other questions for Mr. Church? Okay, thank you.
Well, I'd be remiss then if I left this podium without directly asking for your vote. So I'll appreciate your approving my contract. I'm good at asking, I'm good at begging, I'm even good at groveling. Thank you.
True lobbyist, thank you. All right, so further council discussion. So, go ahead. You want to follow up?
Just real quick, I agree with Mr. Church's position that he sets up the appointments, and I think we, as a council, are committed to making sure that someone attends those appointments, and we start showing more representation.
And I'll have on future agendas my idea on that. It'll come up. All right, well, I'll take a motion then if we have no further discussion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to award professional services agreement for federal lobbying services for a term of 5 years to David Church and Associates in the amount not to exceed $7,250 per month or $87,000 annually.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes, thank you. Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, with that, we'll move to item F2, the fiscal year 22-23 mid-year CIP budget amendment. Staff report, Ms. Eustachian.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This thing's always too high. On February 7th, I brought forward a mid-year report and budget amendment. Within that report and amendment included CIP discussion on projects that you have approved in the public hearing this evening. So since the CIP projects had to go to public hearing first, you are now seeing any budget amendments that are stemming from the approval that you had in the CIP for public hearing. Now, some of those projects were closing the projects or reappropriating those funds to other projects. Those don't necessarily need budget amendments. The ones that need budget amendments are any projects that you are making changes to the funding or are new projects. And so those need to be appropriated within the current year fiscal budget. And that's what is now in this staff report. And you have that, these few projects that are actually on the first page of the staff report. And so with that, the recommended action is to approve those budget adjustments that go with the approved CIP from this evening.
All right, thank you. Public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, and then we will move to council discussion and comments or questions. Mr. Lara?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Really quickly, Jennifer, in your staff report, on your table that you presented, you've got the PD restroom modular, which is a CFD project, correct? Or CFD funded project.
Correct.
And then Shadow Creek Playground. And I understand that the funds, you've got two different account numbers. You've got 255 and 510. Can you please explain why those two, both being CFD projects, have different account numbers, please?
Yes, so the city has actually 4 CFD funds, and the different funds were created for the purpose of the assessments. So you have your CFD capital projects, your public safety, your services, and your administration. And so they're all separated, so that way there's different allowable uses of those funds.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
All right, seeing no further discussion or questions, I'll take a motion.
May I make a motion to review and approve the fiscal year 2022-2023 mid-year CIP budget amendments?
I'll second that.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. Moving to item F3, approve a purchase order in amount not to exceed $1,495,343.59 to Creative Bus Sales for the procurement of 2 CNG Type H Eldorado National Easy Rider 2 buses, capital improvement project CIP number T-15. Staff report, please.
Start over. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Elisa Mendoza presenting before you. I bring before you the procurement of 2 CNG Type H Eldorado National Easy Rider 2 buses. So each year, staff reviews the size and age of our fleet, and in the current fiscal year, RCTC approved the replacement of 2 CNG Eldorado buses. The Federal Transit Authority requires competitive bidding, which was conducted through a purchasing cooperative with Morongo Basin Transit Authority and California Association Coordinated Transportation, CalAct. This satisfies our procurement requirements. There is no general fund impact from this purchase. It's 100% funded through Riverside County Transportation Commission, CIP Project 2301. Staff asks that you approve the purchase of 2 CNG Eldorado buses and a purchase order. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you. Public comment?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Right, thank you. The only question I have is, when it comes to the additional equipment and the bus wraps and so forth that go into that, that comes back as a separate item, and is that still a part of the transportation fund, or is any of the general fund?
Everything is within the purchase of the bus, the wrapping.
Oh, okay. Thank you then for that. Any other questions or comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the procurement of 2 CNG Type H Eldorado National Easy Rider 2 buses from Creative Bus Sales and authorize city staff to issue a purchase order in amount not to exceed $1,495,343.59 allocated to CIP project number T15 GL 760. And the rest is on there.
Thank you. I'll second.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. But that brings us to item F4, the approved Public Works Agreement and a purchase order for Janus Brothers Construction for the demolition and installation of a new playground, Three Rings Ranch Park Capital Improvement Project, CIP number P-13, in the amount not to exceed $43,746.40. Staff report.
Mayor and council, thank you. Back in 2021, we came before you and requested for us to apply for a grant. We successfully received that grant, and we purchased some playground equipment. This is the last piece of that, which is hiring a contractor to install that new playground equipment over at Three Rings Ranch Park. We had a community event where the community came out and picked colors and amenities and had a bunch of fun and got to see exactly what it was going to be. And so they picked the plans, and we've been pushing this project through, and this is kind of that last piece. And so James Brother was our low bidder that came in. We got 3 quotes for them for the install services over at the park, and they were the apparent low bidder for us, and that's who we're going to go with. And tonight, I come before you and have a recommendation to approve Public Works agreement with them and to approve a purchase order for us to move forward with this purchase.
Thank you, Mr. Story. Public comment.
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers in the line.
All right, with that then, I'll open council discussion, questions, or I'll entertain a motion. Seeing none, I'll approve the purchase or move that we approve the purchase order for playground demolition and installation and authorization to execute Public Works Agreement for CIP number P13.
I'll second that.
Councilmember White,
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt,
Yes.
Councilmember Lara,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn,
Yes.
Mayor Martinez.
Yes. All right, brings us to item F5, the discussion and determination of power of appointment of an alternate member to a voting seat. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This item is a housekeeping item to help clarify the process of appointing an alternate member to a voting seat on the Economic Development Committee. Due to a recent change of the policies and procedures, there are now 2 seats that are open and available for these alternate members to be able to take. However, there's nothing in the policy that states what that process is, so we have brought that before council to determine.
Thank you for that. Public comment?
I have no written requests. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers in the line.
All right, with that, I'll open it for discussion. Looks like Councilmember White.
Yes, Mayor, I asked in the Economic Development Committee meeting to discuss this because I thought at some point with one or both of our standing committees, we had given authorization to the committee that if we've already approved an alternate and there's an opening, that they don't necessarily need to come back to us to, for us to bless moving an alternate into that position. And when I brought that up in the Economic Development Committee, we weren't sure whether or not that was the process. And so that's why I'd asked Nicole to question us and see what the deal is on that.
Very well, thank you.
I was just going to mention that that was my understanding as well.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's just now it's put down in paper where I'll have it official, but I think it makes sense. I mean, that's what the alternate's for, so it makes sense to do that. My only question is, does the finance and audit follow the same thing, or will you need to bring back another item for that?
There are no alternate member seats on finance and
Oh,
audit.
there you go.
I do have a question to pose, however. This works out to where there are 2 seats open and there's 2 alternates. However, what would be the process if there was 1 seat open and 2 alternates? The committee makes that decision?
Mayor, my suggestion would be whoever was appointed first.
Okay.
I would agree with that.
So by appointing first, you mean when we appoint them and we go in order?
Yes.
That's what you have, okay.
Mr. Mayor, so then if they are appointed in the same evening, it just should go by the individual that was actually appointed first.
That was my thought, yes.
Okay.
Would council like staff to update the policy again and then bring it back as a consent calendar item so that we have the language in there?
That would probably be
Yes,
better.
please.
Okay, I'll work with Nicole on that.
Councilmember Lar?
So and I don't recall, Nicole, do you keep those records? Who's appointed at first and who's appointed second, how many votes they got, things like that?
Yes, the votes are tallied and kept
Okay.
with the minutes.
Is the person who's appointed first typically the one that has the most, the second, or, let's just say the second most votes, right? Is that, are they appointed in order of number of votes, is my question.
I would go in order of nomination, because that's typically how the votes are done. So when council places their nominations, whoever's nominated first, second, third, that's how the votes would go. So then whoever was nominated first and took that first alternate seat, that would be the first one.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Yes, it does.
And you don't foresee any issue with that? I mean, the only other thing when they have them to vote, and I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I would say the only other thing would be to bring them back for interviews, but I don't know if that's necessary, seeing as they've already been appointed.
No,
as
I
an
mean,
alternate.
well, I thought maybe if they were, if there were 2 alternates and the EDC can vote with amongst themselves, but we don't need to do that if it's already got a
The
system
simple
there.
process might be to just have alternate 1, alternate
I was just
2,
going to say, yeah.
Oh,
and name
At-
them
at
at
the
the
time
time
that we
of
do that.
appointment.
That's a good idea. Can we
Yeah, I would
incorporate-
go with that.
Can we put that in the language then? So then that'll clarify. Do we agree on that?
Yep. Yep.
Okay. Very well, thank you for that. Okay, so that is just some direction, and I think you have direction on that. You're clear.
Thank you.
All right, that takes us to item F6, the proposed cancellation of the regular city council meeting scheduled for July 4th, 2023. Staff report.
You just gave it.
Mayor, I'll move to approve the cancellation of the. I'll move to approve the cancellation of the July 4th meeting.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. All right, so brings us to item F7, the approval of the city attorney invoices for the month of January.
And because this affects my law firm, I'll recuse myself again.
Thank you, Mr. Pickney. We have public comments on this item?
I have no written comments.
should have asked
Rudy,
on
do
the
we
last
have any
item.
callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, so seeing none, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the invoices in the amount of $84,418.88.
I'll second.
Councilmember White?
Yes.
Councilmember Voigt?
Yes.
Councilmember Lara?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Fenn?
Yes.
Mayor Martinez?
Yes. Ms. Wheeler, I think I skipped public comment for F6. Did we have any?
I do not have any written comments. I can check with Rudy.
Yeah, just double.
Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to item G, the legislative updates and discussion.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Just a few items ago, we appointed our new lobbyist, so staff will commence working with them immediately on the opportunities for funding. We understand that the earmarks otherwise known as community benefit project funding. Windows have opened for both Senator Padilla and Senator Feinstein's office. So we'll be getting our information on projects over to them, meaning the lobbyist, to get those submitted. Along with that, we will be bringing back an item to council to apprise you as to what staff has submitted for those requests based on the legislative platform and the funding priorities that were adopted earlier this year. So that will be coming back to you. From a previously discussed legislative item at the last meeting, we will have an update for you on the initiative that was discussed. And we will be working on, again, updating the funding plan and hitting it hard with the lobbying staff to identify grants and things that are ready for us in our shelf-ready projects to submit for. That concludes the legislative update, but I'm happy to answer any questions or take direction at this time.
I do have a question on where we're at now. So we have our new federal lobbyist, so we still have our current state lobbyist.
Yes.
That contract goes through the year still?
Yeah, it's current through June 30th of this year. We do have the opportunity to terminate that contract with, I believe, a 20-day notice is what's in our professional service agreement, if we so choose to. I will say the firm that we have now has been working primarily on state updates for us on legislation that's been coming through, although they also apprised us of the earmark window being open. But they are working for an extremely reduced rate, and so city manager and I will be discussing if, I guess, what the continued process will be if we want to have them remain on and utilize them for state stuff for the remaining part of the contract, or if we're going to terminate that contract and then RFP for state separately.
All right, and keep me apprised, because April comes the League of Cities State Summit, so I'd like to know if they're going to be, helping us with that. or
Absolutely.
What's going to go on.
Okay.
Any other questions, concerns? Did we have public comment on legislative items?
I have no written comments. Rudy, do we have any callers on the line?
I have no callers on the line.
All right, brings us to H, Economic Development Update.
Update for you this evening includes the Economic Development Committee met, I believe, day after council last week, so February 8th, somewhere in there. The committee was reorganized, appointed a new chair and a new vice chair. An update was provided from staff on the initiative or the incentive programs, which are now live on the city's website, and we are currently accepting applications. We've actually received a few already for various incentive programs. In each of your boxes are some business-looking cards. If you have not grabbed them already, please do so. On those cards, there's a QR code, and you can hand those out to any businesses currently in the city or any businesses you would like to come to the city. And when they scan that code, it will take them to the website, which has all of the incentive information on there, and would show them, what the city is offering in order for them to, encourage them to bring their business to the city. So we have plenty of those business cards for you guys. We'll be handing them out to the various committee and commission members, as well as any staff who would like to have them as well. And then lastly, we are looking at March 29th as a date for a downtown business meeting. We haven't had one since before the holidays, and we feel it's time to convene one again. So you'll be seeing some advertisements, social media, et cetera, email blasts going out on that. And we'll be providing, again, information on the incentive programs to make sure everybody stays aware of those still being out there, and let them know what we've received so far and how the processing is going. We'll be talking about a new program that we're going to roll out with some of the downtown restaurants, sort of a fun way to get people out to eat and encourage participation in tasting everybody's dishes downtown. I don't want to give too much away. And then we'll also be providing an update on where we are with the downtown revitalization plan. Staff has been meeting every other week with the consultant for the downtown plan, and so we're making progress already, and we'll have some updated information on where we're at with that, when we can expect to have some community meetings, and what the timeline is looking like. So that concludes my report this evening. I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, seeing none, thank you. All right, moving on to item I, City Treasurer Report.
Nothing at this time, Mayor.
Thought maybe you'd have a page to read. Item J, City Clerk Report. Oh, all right, thank you. Item K, City Attorney Report.
Yes, I gave my monthly report on the 7th. The only additional thing that I have to add is that the AIG litigation is now fully settled. We have a signed settlement agreement, so.
Thank you, Mr. Pinckney. Any questions for the attorney? Nope. Then we'll go to item L, City Manager Report.
Just a reminder that next Tuesday, February 28th, City Council set a workshop for 5 p.m. here, and it will be to discuss the sewer system management plan and the proposed fats, oil, and grease ordinance. And it'll be a discussion only, and then after that, the ordinance and the plan would be adopted. In your packet are some flyers that you've seen previously. I do want to point out that there's a new one, the Pennsylvania Widening Project. Mercedes created a neat little visually appealing flyer to let the public know what the timeline is on the construction of Pennsylvania Widening, and I think it's pretty neat. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions for the City Manager? Right, that brings us to item M, the future agenda items. And I'll go ahead and mention right now what I would like to do. So on the next meeting, now that we have a federal lobbyist, what I'd like to see is the delegation go to Washington. I'd like to, as legislative liaison, myself, city manager, deputy city manager, but what I'd like to do is bring it back to council next meeting, just for input, to see if there are any other council members interested. I know some councils send all of their council, some councils send 2 members council. So I'd like discussion on that to see where we stand on that, as well as input from Mr. Church and staff to see what would be the best approach to that.
Comment on that, Mr.
Yes.
Mayor? Can we get a report from staff? Because I know that on that subject that the city has gone to Washington in the past, and just a brief update of, how many people went, how long they were there, what was discussed, the wins and the losses, from the event, kind of just a past report on how it had gone before, so we can expect what, have better expectations going, if we send everybody, if we send part and so forth. So just kind of a replay of what had transpired in the past.
In previous years, a delegation consisted of 2 council members and anywhere from 2 to 4 staff. It was generally 3 days. The schedule started at 9 a.m. with meetings and usually ended about 4. There were multiple meetings throughout the days, some on Capitol Hill, some with agencies. A lot of walking, a lot of talking, a lot of shaking hands. A package was put together beforehand with the asks, and those were all handed out. Some of the meetings were with elected officials, some were with staff members, some were more formal. The elected official really dictates the length and subject matter. We did that for probably a decade. I know one year another agency joined us. The Park District sent 2 of their elected officials and their general manager with us for money for the fire camp that's at the Park District at Noble Creek. We did come back, I don't recall how many times, but we did come back with money. Some of the money was earmarked for Potrero. Congressman Lewis, Jerry Lewis, was our congressman at the time, and he did, it's community benefit now, but back then it was earmark money. He did give us earmark money for Potrero. It was beneficial. It was a lot of work. And David Turch was our lobbyist at that time, and they set up the schedule. They sent it to us ahead of time so that we knew exactly when to fly in, how much work was ahead of us, and then when, how long we'd be back there.
All right, very good, thank you.
And for council's benefit, we're looking at possible April 24th week of attending. So see if that, for those that might want to go, if that would be a conflict or not. And of course, the time duration, I'm probably, if I go, I'm looking maybe 2 or 3 days. I wouldn't be able to do the full 4 or 5, but if we have a second council member, maybe they can overlap some of that time. So think about that, bring back your questions and availability if you're interested and so forth. We'll have a little discussion and go from there.
And those dates were discussed with Mr. Turch and his staff based on the congressional calendar. So we have a copy of the congressional calendar, and we sat down and tried to figure out when would be the best time.
All right, then. Any other?
Mr. Mayor? So is there any need then for Sacramento at this time to work on something like that? Or is that kind of a different schedule that can be addressed later? Or is that of an urgent matter that we should talk about that at the same time?
So Mayor Martinez mentioned in April the city leader days.
Yeah.
They used to be called legislative days. The Cal Cities has changed it. That would be the time, April 12th through 14th. Different issues, state and federal. We're not going to.
So it's not necessarily need to be set up by a lobbyist for us to go to Sacramento?
It should be, correct. It should
Okay,
be.
okay.
And I'll be attending that one, so you can bring that, I guess, as well.
You wanna
And have
bring
a
that?
legislative
We can talk.
item. We'll just put the state and federal on.
All right, super, thank you. Okay. That way we can all figure out our schedules and so forth. Thank you.
All right, any other agenda items? Seeing none, we'll go to council reports. Councilmember Voigt, would you like to start us?
Absolutely. I would just like to thank Mercedes for those. Excellent. They give us a talking point, and I'm really appreciative of those. So thank you. Otherwise, nothing to report.
Councilmember Lara?
I have nothing to report at this time, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember White?
Two things. Number one, those business cards, I think we need to get them out to not only staff and committee members, but to our general public. And, if we dropped a whole bunch off at the Hat, who knows? We might get the Hat to come here one day. That'd be my preference, but what's that? There's been a big call for projects at RCTC. It's the first time it's happened in years. And I just wanted to bring that to everyone's attention. And I've already talked to Mr. Hart about that, and I know it's already on your calendars, but I just wanted to bring that up because it doesn't happen that often.
No.
So that's all I had.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Finn?
Yes, thank you. I have one thing to report, and I'll keep it brief in case you want to add anything to it. But on the 15th of December, Mayor and I had the opportunity to meet with Congressman Ruiz, and I wanted to thank him for reaching out to us. He's the one that set up that meeting through his staff and came to the city to see what our needs were and so forth. So I was very pleased with that, and without needing to go into details, I wanted you to be able to report on it too, Mr. Mayor. But I wanted to give his public thanks to his office for that. That's all I have.
All right, thank you for that. So that's a great way of starting my report. So yes, we met with Congressman Ruiz. It was an hour meeting, which is rare for a congressman, so we really appreciate that time. We discussed city's projects and our kind of our priorities of our projects, and Union Pacific being one of the main ideas, topics that we talked about. We'll be giving him a map that will show where our projects are, and eventually that map will have where we are as far as our process. He really wanted to know where our projects are, what process, where they are in the process, and this way he's available to, when something comes up, he can go and say, okay, who's ready in that place, how much are they looking for, and that kind of stuff. So I think that's gonna really help putting him into the loop. And he had a lot of learning. He learned a lot about grade separations and so forth on that day. So we're glad we enlightened him with some of the terminology and some of the process that we need to go through and are going through. City Manager Gibbs said that I think it was 30 years you've ever had a congressperson or never had a congressperson in that room. So it's a great start, and he's very proactive, and he really is reaching out. And Michael Bailey is legislative assistant, doing a great job communicating with us. So I'm really proud for that. Do you have a comment on that? Oh, you had your light on, didn't you?
Oh, sorry.
No problem. So thank you again, and thank you for bringing that up. Did you want to add anything to that part?
sir.
Okay. Furthering on, I attended the Three Rings Ranch Career Day. I want to thank CEO and the staff for putting the stuff together. It was an awesome time. We had some city plans out there that, you know, had the personal stuff taken off, but the kids stamped it with a stamp that we had from the pool, and they really felt they were important doing that stamping on those documents. It was really nice to see them take interest in the city. So thank you for CEO and staff for preparing all that. We had our first youth council meeting. We had an introduction, pretty much kind of set up the tone for the year of what we're looking for. It's a short year, inaugural meeting, but we had, I believe, 6 or 7 show up out of the 9. And they are eager to start. Next meeting is in March. We'll have the pass our bylaws, we'll elect our officers, and I got a couple of things I want them to discuss. And we positioned their meeting at the second Tuesday of the month, which allows us to have council input and discussion. So we'll talk about maybe an item, or I'll bring it up in my report, where if you have anything you want them to discuss on the first Tuesday meeting, we can discuss that and then direct them, and then we can bring back the results on the next meeting. I attended the Riverside County Mayor's meeting. We had 2 of them since the last report. We were concerned about the government cut to the transportation funds. As many of you know, the government took out and cut a lot of that transportation, hoping that the feds were gonna make up for that, which is a ridiculous approach, but, you know, we gave our 2 cents in that. Blythe is asking for our support for their prison. That prison is deemed to be shut down, and they really would like that prison kept open. It's the lifeblood of that city, and without that prison, we would really have a real problem in that city as far as their economic development. So they're asking for support. I think it's worthy of support. So just keep that in mind as we talk more about that going in the future. I attended the Cal Cities Environmental Quality Committee. We talked about energy, water, recycling. Unfortunately, the representative from Norco and myself, representing the Riverside Division, were the only ones that brought up air quality. And again, this is a state committee, so we have all the way from Northern California down to Southern. And it's really difficult to show the others our air quality issues, because they're at a way that's coastal issues and water issues, which are all important, of course. But, you know, when it comes to the inland, we know what we have with our, you know, vehicles and the logistics centers and so forth. So it was a little disappointing that I couldn't get the environmental committee to put that as one of the priorities for the year, but we tried. So we'll keep abreast on what's going on that, and I'll let you know as that items come forth from the legislator concerning air quality. I had breakfast with the supervisor. We gave him our ideas and priorities. It's pretty much for him to set the tone, and he's really for trying to solve homelessness. So the supervisor's homelessness is one of his main focuses. So he shared a lot of his ideas with that and how cities are dealing with that. So it was nice to hear some of his ideas and how he could help cities with that. But on our next mayor's meeting with the supervisor, we'll talk a little bit more about our local other issues that we have, because we'd like to have his input, or at least I would, on some of the issues as far as infrastructure and so forth. RCA meeting, we had our fee updates and property acquisitions meeting. We talked about the Poppy Super Bloom. If you know, the Super Bloom creates a very large tourist attraction, but it creates you talk about a Carmageddon, that is a real mess when that happens. So RCA has decided to close a lot of the properties down so people don't go and park and walk out and so forth. And we're not predicting the biggest super bloom as we had in the past, but they are preparing because they learned their lesson from that one, I'll tell you. But with that, that is all I have. Clement.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I was remiss in, I wanted to reach out, or just, I wanted to thank the city of Banning for their efforts. On Friday, February 10th at 1, we had a forced main leak, a sewer main leak. The city of Banning wastewater superintendent Perry Gertis, as well as the city manager Doug Schultz and public works director Art Vea, assisted us with our Vector truck because our Vector truck was unavailable at the time. They also offered us a bypass pump as well to assist us with this forced main leak, which probably saved the city some money in fines. So I just wanted to make sure that we thank the city of Banning publicly. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
All right, very well. Does our truck have an issue, or is it just was busy at the time?
No, it was actually in the shop for what was supposed to be a minor maintenance and turned out to be a major maintenance, so it wasn't.
All right.
And if it pleases the mayor, what I'd like to do is attend a Banning City Council meeting and thank them personally as well. Is that all right?
Please do, yes.
All right.
I definitely, thank you there. All right, any other comments last minute? All right, with that, we'll adjourn at 7:21 PM. Thanks, Agnes. I thought.